All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. We're super excited to share with you some opportunities that we have for farmers to grow their value-added product businesses. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. My name's Grace, and I work with Community Alliance with Family Farmers. Oops. Went too far. So this webinar is over Zoom. It's in a meeting format, not the webinar format. And so it'll be a little bit, hopefully more interactive. You all are going to be muted upon entry. You can feel free to add questions and comments into the chat as we go through today's presentation. And we are saving like a quarter of the time, maybe a little bit more, for an open Q&A at the end, so you all can come off mute and ask questions if you have them. As I said, we are recording this webinar so that we can send it to folks who couldn't make it live today. And so you'll get that and a PDF of the presentation via email within 1 week. I'm going to talk a little bit about Community Alliance with Family Farmers. If some of you are new to our work, we are known by our acronym CAF, and our mission is to build sustainable food and farming systems through policy advocacy and on-the-ground programs. We have lots of programs for farmers to participate in and to support farmers throughout the state. We have CAF staff located throughout the state. So a lot of our services reach farmers in, kind of all over. We have our farmer services program that works on everything from wildfire resilience on farms to small farm technology, food safety, and organic certification. Our farm to market team helps farmers diversify their markets and connect with new market channels. Our ecological farming team does on-farm research and help farmers adopt ecological farming practices on their farms. And our policy advocacy team really engages with farmers on the ground and brings their voices to Sacramento and DC. We also host the California Small Farm Conference every year. It's usually at the end of February. And it's been virtual the past few years. So super accessible for lots of farmers in California and beyond. So we actually started accepting proposals for conference workshops and presentations. So encourage you to check out our website if you'd like to learn more, or maybe submit a conference proposal. I'm going to introduce everyone briefly just for a moment, and then we'll hear from everyone as we go through the presentation. As I mentioned, my name's Grace, and I'm an organic certification specialist with CAF, and I also work with farmers on food safety. Kaylee Feiereisel is here, and Kaylee is the Farmer Services Director at CAF, and so manages the Farmer Services program that I just spoke about. And then Ellen Raleigh is the founder of Ellen Raleigh Creative and Strategy, and she's the consultant that we work with to help support farmers with their value-added products. Ellen has lots of experience growing value-added product businesses with farmers, and so we're really excited that she's here today to speak to some of the work that she does with us. Welcome, folks. I'm not sure how many of you have just joined us, but feel free to ask questions or to drop questions or comments into the chat. And at the end, we'll have space for an open Q&A where you can unmute yourself and ask any questions. So we're really excited to talk to you about some opportunities that we have for you all as farmers to participate in growing your value-added product business. We've been working with Ellen for the past couple of years to offer the Value Added Producer Grant Scholarship, which helps growers write and submit applications for the USDA Value Added Producer Grant. And over time, we've realized that some growers aren't quite ready for the grant. And so we have this new opportunity that we're announcing today called the Profitability Roadmap. That's kind of a stepping stone for growers to eventually be able to apply for the Value Added Producer Grant. So we'll talk more about that. We're going to open up the application or start accepting applications at the end of this webinar. And we'll drop the link once we get to that point. We also have an Acidified Foods Manufacturing School Scholarship that Kaylee will speak to. And then we'll just briefly talk about the Value Added Producer Grant Scholarship toward the end, since that one is not reopening until early 2024. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ellen to talk about the profitability roadmap.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Grace. And give me 1 second to share my screen. So I always love knowing a little bit about who I'm talking to. So if people want to use the chat also to just drop, if you are interested in value-added production stuff, a little bit about what your farm grows and what kind of product you're interested in making. It just helps me when I'm presenting stuff to kind of have a bit of a sense of who I'm talking to. So as Grace mentioned, we have decided to offer this opportunity because the last 2 years we've been collaborating to write value-added producer grants. I've been writing them since 2016. And we noticed that some farms who wanted to start writing a value-added producer grant weren't quite at the stage where I feel confident they would get a grant, whether that's because their internal tracking and being able to pull the data that I'd need to write the grant wasn't there, or that the product itself was kind of far enough along that the USDA would award money to it. So that's where this program comes in, which is super exciting. I've been offering this program with farms and small food businesses for about 5 years, I think. So it's great to be able to work with some small producers like yourself on this program. So let's talk a little bit more about what it is. There's kind of 6 buckets. It's a bit of a difficult program to explain, so I just want you to bear with me, because really what I'm talking to, as I said, there are different businesses creating different things that are not quite yet at a stage of development where the product is really working for the producer a lot of times, and or in this case also ready to apply for grant funding and other kind of financial funding. So what the issue is that's holding that farm back, that producer back, is different. You know, it's not a one size fits all thing, how to tweak your product so that it is profitable and has a long future. Where you're starting is different and where you're trying to get to is different. So I kind of created this program to have a bit of a structure around that, but then recognize that for each one of the clients I work with, the needs are different, the goals are different. And so I wanted something to be flexible. So there's kind of 6 buckets of things that might come into play. You can see them here. So one thing we do often with the profitability roadmap is get really clear on the product. This is really key when someone has an idea but doesn't have a product yet. So for example, someone is, growing tomatoes, has a lot of overage tomato production, and they're like, I know I want to make something, but what's the thing that's going to sell? And what's the thing that I can make? And why am I going to make another tomato sauce? There's so many out there. And so a lot of times that involves doing market research, understanding your target customer, getting really clear on what the product's going to be that we have confidence in that it's going to sell well. Another thing we often do is really diving into your cost of goods. It's super normal for small scale producers not to know actually what it costs them to make their product. And often when I do this exercise with people, we find out that possibly they aren't making that much money as much as they thought they were when they're selling their product, or that right now how it's being made, they wouldn't really be able to sell into wholesale if they wanted to. So that's another piece. We dive into cost of goods and figure out solutions to issues happening with the cost of goods. Creating product concepts. Also, this is more around new products or products that you're looking to change channels. If you're selling into farmers markets now, but you want to sell into grocery or you want to sell into food service, there might be tweaks that need to be made about how the product is packaged, how you talk about the product, what your sell sheet looks like, what the materials around sales look like, communicating your vision. So that kind of, I started to talk about that with the sell sheet. With online, you know, if people are looking to go into online e-commerce, really doing a good audit of how you're talking about that product on your product pages, and making sure really, especially as you go into anywhere other than farmers markets, there's a lot of your product, your packaging, the words you use having to stand in for a lot of the relationship that typically is what's selling your product on that one-on-one level at a farmer's market. So we'll do things related to that sometimes in a profitability roadmap. Organization often comes up. I am very, I'm very particular about organization, I'd say, and I've developed a ton of tools on how to keep production organized and how to keep records so that if you do want to apply for a value-added producer grant, that you have all the numbers that you need to do so, sales numbers and cost of goods numbers and other things that you'll need to pull to be able to apply for these types of programs. And then there's always plotting how your vision will be realized. So the profitability roadmap always ends with a really clear projected timeline forward of the steps you need to take to get to the vision that we've crafted together, the product change, whether that's a launch or a repackaging or a new sales campaign or marketing campaign. Like, what are the remaining steps? How long will those take? And how do you do them so that you're really clear on what happens next? So I kind of talked about this already, but we do a lot of times we'll do market research. We do operations and compliance planning, which is something I didn't quite talk about, but I will in the next slide, actually. Cost of goods projections and what I like to call the almighty timeline, because if you don't really have a plan for how you're going to do it, often it just gets buried in all of the other things that you have going on in your farm. So just to give you a few examples of the types of farms who and businesses I've done profitability roadmap work with, this is really so you can identify if this is a good opportunity for you. So this first one, Little Apple Treats, was one of my first clients back in 2016 when I first didn't know I was starting Ellen Raleigh Creative and Strategy, but it turns out I was. They approached me because they were selling into farmers markets, doing really well, but they were also in some wholesale, and their product just really wasn't moving that well in wholesale, and they wanted to explore that channel like more heavily. So we kind of dug in and like, what's going on here? And we realized that their packaging at the time was a cost saving measure, that everything really looked, it was the same colors. It was hard to distinguish between different products. So buyers were only buying in one flavor instead of multiple. And when we ran their cost of goods, we actually noticed that some of their products, they were actually losing money in wholesale. So what we did together was sourcing new packaging for them that was actually going to cut their cost of goods and make the product look more distinct from each other so that we increased their sales. And we did copywriting, really getting clear on what parts of their message at the farmer's market were being lost on the packaging, because that packaging is now standing in for the whole spiel that you give people when the product's just on the shelf. We developed sales materials for them. And since then, they've applied for and gotten 3 value-added producer grants. So it's been really fun to watch them grow using this program. And their sales have definitely kept pace. And it's just been exciting being part of their farm. The second one isn't a farm, but it's a good example of if you just have an idea. Well, actually they are. They call themselves a farm. It's more like a few plum trees in a beautiful garden, but It is a very small farm. And they have a retail shop in this case, and they had produce and didn't know what they wanted to do with it, which is how a lot of people come to the profitability roadmap, is like, I have this produce. I know I want to make a product because I can sell it year round. And I've heard that I can make more money selling a value-added product than just produce. But like, what do I make? And so that's what we did with their project, is really thinking about what's going to be unique to your customer, and then figuring out, who's going to make it, looking at sourcing co-packers, what is like federal labeling around the products that you're making. So what does the label have to be? All of that stuff. An example of someone who's not on here that's was a little farther along, who we wrote a value-added producer grant for this year. They had a product, but weren't quite making it as one should. I'll just say, I'll leave it general. We all know that sometimes when we're starting out, we kind of make things and see if they sell. And that's where they were at, which is great. They saw there is a market for this thing. And then the question was, do we make it in-house, or do we get a co-packer? If we get a co-packer, what are the options? How is the product going to get stored? How is the product going to get shipped to our different farmers markets? Like, what is that whole system going to look like? And that's what we focused on. And then Oya Organic Farm, they were similarly, where they had been making stuff in-house under a cottage food operation. And when we looked at the numbers, we realized they could actually move to a co-packer and make more. It would work better with their system internally, and it would actually cut their costs. So a lot of our work together was figuring out that change, and how that affected their packaging and all those other pieces. Another company that I've done this type of project with, really the question was more on the sales, like, how do I sell? And what are the materials that I need, getting them set up with materials that they needed, defining what stores they could approach, all of those kinds of more of like, what does a long-term profitability look like if I'm setting, like, how to set my price, and then if I'm going to sell into wholesale, how much of my sales should go into wholesale versus retail, and figuring out those kinds of questions. So as you can tell, it's a range of different things that we do in a profitability roadmap. But some of the sample deliverables, which is here in the second section. So like, for example, label reviews to FDA guidelines, cost of goods analyses, launch timelines, compliance schedules, product details, trackers, co-packer sourcing documents. It's really kind of seeing, where is your product out now? Where are you trying to take it? And what are the holes to get there? And we through meetings, and then actually leading you through activities, but us actually delivering parts of the project ourselves, we come to, within 8 weeks, kind of take you from where you're at right now to an understanding of how to get to where you're ready to apply for a value-added producer grant, hopefully, and also you just feel ready for your product to grow, either to launch or to grow its sales and become a more profitable part of your business. And that is kind of the gist of what a profitability roadmap is. So yeah, we're going to talk more about some of the other opportunities, and then I think we're going to go through the schedule later on. So I'll leave it at that and look forward to any of the questions that came up for you.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah.
Love those examples that you shared. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Kaylee. Kaylee, can you see my screen with the Acidified Foods Manufacturing Scholarship info on it?
Yeah, it looks great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time to listen in on this presentation today. So the second opportunity related to value-added products that we at Community Alliance with Family Farmers, or CAF, that we wanted to share with you all is that there's an Acidified Foods Manufacturing School Scholarship. So if you're considering making value-added products that are canned and shelf-stable, like tomato sauces and hot sauces and salsas and like different things like that, it would help. And you are not going to outsource that to a co-packer. Even if you are, frankly, it would help if you did this Acidified Foods Manufacturing School, because you learn a lot about the food science behind how to make a safe bottled product. And there's this online course offered through North Carolina State that is 100% online. There's a little screenshot there of their webpage. It costs $400, and it's a series of, I forget what, 6 or 7 modules. They say estimate that it takes over around 16 hours to complete on your own self-paced timeline. You have to complete it though within a year. And after each module, there's a 10-question quiz. And if you don't pass the quiz with at least 70 or 80% score in 2 tries, like you can't remain in the course. So it's like you get a formal certificate when it's done and whatnot, and could just help you understand the whole food safety side of canned shelf-stable value-added products. And if you're going to do something like this, like renting out a commercial kitchen space yourself and doing it, you would 100% need to do this. And then along with having other permits and licenses in place. But like I said, if you're planning to work with a co-packer, it would be really helpful too, because it will just make it easier to talk to them about scientific stuff. And yeah, when I'm done, we can get the link in the chat. So basically, this opportunity is that like we mentioned earlier in this presentation, from August 1st through the 10th, CAF is going to open up this scholarship opportunity again. We had a round of this about a year ago. And so we'll open it up, and we have funding to support a certain number of growers to participate in this training. We'll have a short application that it'll be pretty simple to fill out, and then we'll close it on August 10th, and then we'll review the applications, and then we'll let folks that had competitive applications know that they won, and that basically CAF pays for that $400 registration fee, and you're able to take the course for free. So everyone who's attending this webinar, who registered for it and is here live or registered, and we have your email addresses, that list of folks will get a direct email on August 1st when this goes live. And it'll also be in other CAF general communications. But the link for the North Carolina State page is in the chat. And I think that's all the key details on this opportunity. If anyone has specific questions on it, you can put it in the chat or save them for to unmute in a little bit.
Thanks, Kaylee. So we have just a few eligibility requirements or priorities for the profitability roadmap or the Acidified Foods Manufacturing School Scholarship. So we are going to prioritize farmers who are based in California based on applications that we get, but farmers throughout the United States are eligible. I know we have some folks from different parts of the country who like to attend the webinars and have asked us in the past. So farmers throughout the US are eligible. It wasn't mentioned in the slides or the information about the profitability roadmap, but I can send it following this webinar. The profitability roadmap has a small investment for farmers who participate, and it's based on a sliding scale dependent on your gross annual sales. And so for farmers who make $250,000 in gross annual sales per year, the investment is $250 for the profitability roadmap, and the farms who are over $250,000, the investment is $500. The Acidified Foods Manufacturing School Scholarship is at no cost, though. We cover all of the complete cost for that. Any questions about that, feel free to put it in the chat as well. So I'm going to touch just briefly on the VAPG Scholarship program that we have. This will be our third year running the scholarship, and it is a program for farmers who are interested in applying for the USDA's Value Added Producer Grant and want additional support from a grant writer who is Ellen and her team. The program provides funding for the farmer to work with Ellen and team to prepare and submit a VAPG application. The grant is pretty competitive. I think last year, a little over 50% of applications were funded, and Ellen has a 100% success rate with submitting VAPG applications with farmers. So it's a really exciting opportunity. This one is more of an investment for farmers who participate. So last year, CAF provided each farmer $4,500. And then the farmer had to provide an additional $2,500, which was the accumulated in the total cost of $7,000 for the scholarship program. And so I give this example, this cost as a baseline. There is some room that maybe it will be adjusted in 2024 once we open up the opportunity. And we have a little bit more information about what is included in the cost of working with Ellen Raleigh. So in addition to a lot of the parts of the profitability roadmap that Ellen mentioned, you'll also get an analysis of your product and project, a recommended strategy for growth through the Value Added Producer Grant, including some projected cost of goods sold, production quantities, and income. Ellen and her team will also do market research for strengthening the arguments that are written into your grant. She will help create budgets and also letters of commitment to send out for signature that will strengthen a grant application. They'll also help support any documentation that might be needed and signing up for the government authorizations that growers need to apply through the USDA. And then they'll help prepare the final Value Added Producer Grant application for submission. And then participants, the farmers, will actually send those off in the mail themselves. And so you might be asking, how do I apply for this? This sounds super cool. So like with the profitability roadmap and the Acidified Foods Manufacturing Scholarship, in order to decide and allocate the funds, we do ask growers to submit an application. So we'll, for the VAPG Scholarship, folks will submit a short online application and then also potentially be contacted, likely will be contacted for a short phone interview to get some more information, expand upon some of the information that was submitted in the application. And then all of the applications that we receive will be reviewed by a committee made up of farmers and CAF staff. And then the recipients will be selected based on a set of criteria. And then the timeline is usually pretty fast. This year, the Value Added Producer Grant was only open for 60 days, which made really everything very time sensitive. And so if you are interested in this, I think it's important to know that onboarding with Ellen would begin shortly after folks are notified that you receive the scholarship. And yeah, if anyone has questions, we can definitely get to those in just a bit. And then we have, as Ellen said, there are certain things that growers need to have to be really competitive for the Value Added Producer Grant. And so we like to be upfront with this so that you can kind of assess, like, where am I now? Do I need to get some things in order if I am interested in applying for the Value Added Producer Grant in 2024? Typically, the request for proposals comes out in early in the year, so anywhere between January and March, and then applications are due between April and May, again, depending on how long the grant period is open. And so some recommendations for folks to kind of assess where they are and what opportunity might be right for them. It can be really super helpful if growers know their cost of goods sold or have a competitor price comparison. Growers should also have some previous sales data to draw from. Food safety licenses and or permits that are required to produce your product should also already be in hand. The value-added producer grant does have a match requirement, and so growers should have some cash for that match requirement to be competitive in the grant selection process. It can also be helpful for you all to have relationships with buyers who have committed and can provide strong letters of support for purchasing your product. And then there are different types of applications that you can apply with. There's a simplified application, which is for just under $50,000 in funding from the government. And then if you have an application that seeks for more money than that, then your farm needs to have a business plan or a feasibility study on file to submit with your application.
I love this slide too, Grace, because it's like, if you're looking at this list and there's like 2, 3, maybe even all like 5, 6 things that you're like, oh, I want a value-added producer grant, but I don't have that. I guess other than the cash, I can't give you the cash for your match, but that would be like, right, like let's do a profitability roadmap, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to get it so that you have those things. So then when you see this checklist, when we do this webinar, when the VAPG is announced, you're going to be like, yep, got it. I'm ready. So this is a great slide.
Yeah, thanks for expanding on that, Helen. Okay, so you might be wondering, when can I apply for these? Like how can I apply for these? So the profitability roadmap, again, it's the 8-week one-on-one process that Ellen went over. The application for that is going to open today, and I will drop the link into the chat in just a moment. We set the priority deadline for applications for July 14th, and then the final deadline for July 21st. So what that means is that folks who apply by July 14th, their applications will be reviewed first. And then depending on how many folks qualify and how many spots we have, then folks who apply after that, but by July 21st, their applications would be submitted. And then the program runs August 3rd to September 30th. The Acidified Foods Manufacturing School Scholarship, that application will open from August 1st to August 10th. That's the course that's offered through North Carolina State. It's at your own pace, virtual, but must be completed within a year. And we will send a link for the scholarship application when it opens to the folks who registered for this webinar. And then the Value Added Producer Grant Scholarship, that's the one where you would work with Ellen to write a USDA Value Added Producer Grant. And applications will open in early 2024 for that opportunity. We don't quite have a date yet because it depends on when the grant itself is going to open. And so, yeah, stay tuned for some announcements about that. Usually we have a webinar at the beginning of the year to talk about the program in more depth than we have today, and we'll announce the application for that scholarship. So we have some next steps. As I said, I will drop the link to the chat, to the application in the chat for folks. You can get more information. That process is really going to be run by Ellen and her team, since they are most familiar with the information that they need from growers in order to assess, your readiness for the program. And then we have a sign up form if you're interested in being kept in the loop about what is coming next for the Value Added Producer Grant Scholarship Program. And as I'm dropping that into the chat, I think we can get to questions. We're definitely making good time. So if anyone wants to unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand, and I'd be happy to call on you or drop your questions into the chat.
I wanted to make one quick clarification because most of my examples were like setting people up, figuring out co-packers, but I've definitely worked with folks that are like, how do I make this product? And what we're looking at is what are the available kitchens in your area? What are the licenses that you need? What kind of tracking, like food safety tracking do you need so you can get those licenses? So that is a possibility too. It's not only if you're interested in working with a co-packer.
And then there was a question related to like food safety permits and licenses for making certain products. And a few slides back, I think Grace was referencing in applying for the value-added producer grant with USDA. For example, like if your product is a tomato sauce, that requires a processed food registration permit in California. So if you didn't have that permit in place before starting to do that, like to do that application, that it wouldn't work. Like it takes, some time to get that in place. You need to like show that you have all of your like key logistical things in order. So that would be something that would be highlighted in the profitability roadmap experience, that if you weren't sure what you needed, that would all be cleared away. And that's kind of why we're offering this now, 6+ months ahead of before when the next value-added producer grant application would be to help people hopefully be a stepping stone to be ready for that later. If Lauren, if that didn't answer your question, please unmute and yeah.
I'm looking at Randall, your question about GFSI certification programs. I'd say that goes a little bit outside of my comfortable scope, like global GAP. I do a lot of CGMP stuff, like within, like domestically. So a lot of like Whole Food, the different GMP audits that you have to go through to sell into Whole Foods, for example, and those kind of programs, and then the systems that you need to have in place to be able to do that. So it's a little bit of, if it's a very different system than that, then I think it would be a little bit outside of what I typically do. And then Lauren is asking if the cost of the profitability roadmap is the 250 or 500 that was mentioned. Yes. So that one has, oh, Grace put it in there too, is depending on your gross annual sales. Okay, yeah, have it correct. Okay, the global, then I was just like, if it's about like exporting and things like that, then it's kind of outside of my wheelhouse. But if it's for domestic requirements to be selling into larger retailers, yes, that is something that I do.
Looks like we have a question from Emma. Do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for all of this. This is really wonderful and appreciated. I'm just wondering if you guys are aware of another grant through the USDA, which is the Organic Market Development Grant that's due in August. Mm-hmm. Wonder if you're familiar with it, Ellen, and if it would be something you would think you'd be able to help with.
Yeah. I am familiar with it. I'm writing 2 of them. It's the first time that this has been announced, so it's like a learning process as I go, for sure. But in terms of actually writing one, I don't really have capacity, but there would be opportunity if you just wanted to get some like mentorship on it. For example, you can reach out, if you reach out to projects@ellenraleigh.com, I'll stick that in the chat. That's Liz, my other team member, and let her know that you're interested in that and you came from this webinar, and we can see what we could work out about just maybe having a session to answer your questions, because we're kind of using the same system that we go through to create value-added producer grants and tweaking it for that program.
Yeah, that would be great. Just like have a consult. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you're welcome.
Lauren, I see your hand raised. You want to come off mute?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Thank you for hosting this webinar. I'm really happy I heard about it because I've been in a place with my farm for a while now where I'd really like to start doing value-added products, and I don't really know what to do to start. And I've been doing some research online and feeling like the information online is not sufficient and I need additional help. So this is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we grow navel oranges, certified organic, and we'd really like to make some kind of value-added product with basically the ugly ones that we throw away. And marmalade is an idea that we have. So I'm looking forward to applying for all of these opportunities and hopefully working with you, Ellen.
Yeah.
We are hoping to start making some marmalade or something this winter. So that would start in like January or February. But since the value added producer grant isn't until 2024, if we apply for the profitability roadmap now and do that acidified food training this year, do you think it's realistic to maybe start producing something before we get the value added producer grant next year?
So that brings up a few questions. So I definitely think you could start making something. Are you in California?
Yes.
So it'll be part of the profitability roadmap would probably be looking at like, how does it make sense to make the product? If you're going to get all the permits yourself and like rent a kitchen, most recently working with someone, they've definitely gotten better since COVID. That was a real slow time. And people are, I mean, this is fingers crossed because you never know with the government, but I've had a few clients get stuff within 6 months. But it's more like a 6-month process to get your certification. So if you're going to make the product yourself, we'd set you up to get those, but then you'd have, your inspection and all of that. And that's when you can legally make the product. For like a marmalade, for example. Yeah. Some of the dried things you were talking about, we would explore those things. Like there are some of those that might be able to be done. Well, both of them, I guess, might be able to be done in a cottage food operation. And so that timeline is a little bit different. All of that to say the timeline for making it, we kind of like evaluate all those choices. Like if you do it this way, here's kind of what you're looking at, here's what you're looking at, so that you can choose, we can like figure out which way to go. And then it's really depending on the overall view of your farm. It might make sense to actually wait another year to apply to like actually produce the product for a year. And then apply for a value added producer grant in 2025 because you'll have so much more sales to draw from and really showing them that there is a proof of concept, that like we've made this product, there are people that want it. Sometimes I can get around that depending on what your sales are like of produce and like what your network is like. And I've been able sometimes to get around that someone only has like 3 months of sales and we get them a value added producer grant, but we'd want to look at that and kind of decide together.
Yeah, we've been selling fresh oranges for 8 years, and we have a really solid market and a lot of really good sales data that we could use to back that up. So from here, do you recommend that I go ahead and apply for the profitability roadmap?
I think it sounds like a great fit. Totally. It sounds like a great fit for that. And we can kind of evaluate all those things and then get you on the path of like, which way are you going to make the product and what are the things you need to be able to do that, so you're ready for whichever inspection comes along. Okay,
awesome. Thank you so much. I look forward to that.
Thanks for your questions, Lauren. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I want to invite folks if you want to. Oh, there goes Emma again. Emma, do you want to come off mute? And then folks, if you are interested in asking a question, please raise your hand.
Ellen, in your applications for value added, have you, well, maybe I'll just say, so we don't have, we're, a family farm that's been doing this for generations, but we don't have any processing facilities on site. So part of being able to do value-added products means that we need to build a facility, right? And that means a building that then has, would serve the farm in different ways, from storage to refrigeration to a kitchen. And wondering if, when we're wondering if the value-added grant would serve that, in that, can a plan kind of include the constructing a building that can house these things?
So unfortunately it can't with the value-added producer grant, but I'm looking back at your little introduction in the chat, and I see that you're also interested in starting direct marketing is that with your organic produce, like your walnuts and your cherries? So one thing that's really cool about how the value-added program works with the USDA is it's not just finished product, like things that we think of as value-added products. It's actually also like organic cherries count as a value-added product because they're certified organic. So you're making more money from having those versus conventional cherries. So you could, I would say, if you don't have that set up yet, that you can make the processed products, you could get things covered. Like, I don't know what kind of costs are involved when you say you want to start direct marketing, but it could include like website design and social media ads and like a new delivery person if they're going to be going and like delivering these organic cherries and walnuts in your area. And we could do a whole grant that's just about that and then as you get that, hopefully like that increased profitability from selling direct instead of selling most likely to, a distributor or something that you're doing now, then you can use that money to invest in the building.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that before you can do any of that, we need a space to process the cherries and refrigerate.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
So
enable refrigeration, we can include, it just wouldn't be purchased.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like rentable refrigerator units that can be part of the value-added producer grant. But the facility part is the part that you'd have, like the packing room is the part that it's not built. There's nothing related to like building out. Like we can sometimes get some like extra storage, shelving or something as supplies, but not like renovating a space, unfortunately.
Or building a new space.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
More to study.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else with questions? Feel free to come off mute. All right. I think I'm going to move us along then. And we'll kind of wrap up here. So we want to thank you all for joining us and asking your questions and staying engaged with us as we help support farmers with their value-added products. Like I said, we'll send out a recording of this webinar with a PDF of the presentation that includes the links. And feel free to email me with any questions. Ellen also dropped her email in the chat if you have specific questions for Ellen. We have previous value-added product webinars on YouTube. We collaborated with Ellen on a webinar series that we launched last fall. So we have a few different webinars, some of which, trying to multitask, some of which answer some of the questions about the value-added producer grant that were brought up here, like what kind of costs are eligible and ineligible. So I encourage you to check those out. And then I think that's it. Anything else from Kaylee or Ellen before we hop off here?
Nothing from me. I'm just have been excited working with CAF's group of farmers. It's been great to be a small part of how all the hard work you do to build these farms. So I'm just looking forward to more of it. I'm excited to start learning more about your businesses as folks fill out those scholarship applications.
Thanks so much, Ellen. Super excited about this opportunity. I'll drop the link again into the chat for folks for the application. And just to reiterate, the priority deadline for that is July 14th, and then the final deadline is July 21st. All right, well, thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a nice evening and stay cool this weekend. We appreciate everything you do. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.